Okay, we've got the technology solved temporarily at least. We're back at 6 o'clock. Director Callahan, the floor is yours again.
Thank you. Thank you. So I guess I would just point out, okay, a couple of those cost drivers. One is that those instructional materials that we're seeking to have returned to the local budget. The second, again, is due to those hyperinflationary factors that we've discussed around, especially our building materials, our wood, our steel, our electrical conduit, stuff of that nature. Also our groceries that we use over at the Green Ladle. So we think that we've tried to manage these as best as possible, but we're looking for about a $37,500 increase in those combined instructional increases. Those are sort of the big positive variants we've seen. We've seen through some of our staff movement over the last year, some negative movement in terms of a variance related to health costs and things of that nature. Again, that may or may not come back, but it does offset some of that instructional increase. I guess the other thing that we're anticipating, and we just completed last week, and this is exciting, our sophomore tour. So our sophomores from each of those 6 middle schools, from each of those high schools that I just mentioned, came in and toured the building. And then they are able to meet with teachers and file an application for next year if they're interested. The good news is that we're up over 100 applications from where we were at this time last year. The tough news is we're going to say no to a lot of people, unfortunately, this year. So I guess I'd say 2 things. We're going to be as creative as we can to work with every student that we possibly can. We anticipate full enrollment plus. The other thing is that you'll see me back next year. And I think some of you have read in the papers that we are building an expansion satellite campus with the Edward Little High School coming online in the fall of 23. So we'll be expanding programming opportunities and talking about the ways in which we can better serve students. But I think what you'll see overall is that there's a lot of interest and excitement around the programs that we offer at LRTC, that students are seeking us out because they realize that not only is it a very compelling way to learn, it also is something that really takes them that one step closer to doing something that means something after they leave high school. So our students are earning industry credentials while they're with us, so that they're earning, the ability to do state inspections out of our automotive program, for example, or American Culinary Federation certification over at the Green Ladle. Not only that, but those same programs, those students are earning college credits. So for those that leave us and want to go to post-secondary study, they're earning 3, 6, 9 or more. If you look at our Bridge Academy students, as much as 24 credits, or Business Academy students, 24 credits at Central Maine, which is effectively a year's worth of credit while they're in high school. So we're really proud of that. I know that students are very excited about it. And I would also say that we are working very closely with our business partners to make sure that our programming is reflective of what the need is in the community. So again, I was here a number of years ago and you were good enough to support us in a plumbing program. And again, I'm proud to say that our young people are out working in the field, in that trade and doing very well. So I think that the support that the residents of this community have shown us, we've tried to be good stewards of the tax dollar, but also make sure that students are really doing the things that will be productive for them in life and as community members. So that's all that I have in terms of comments. I have a memo that I think you all have. I'd be very pleased to answer any questions you may have.
I just want to add quickly, I know Rob touched on it at the beginning, but we had a slight delay because of audio with the Zoom, but we're back now. And just to reiterate that Article 3 functions in a unique way in that it's the only article that has EPS formula funding that is really more specific to it. It's not a blend. It operates in isolation. So much of what our technical center is trying to do with Rob leading them is using state specific revenues. So their expenditures year after year remain very small above that. And it's typically around costs that, don't forget, can sometimes offset costs for us locally in other ways. And so Rob's outfit through the revenue streams helps take care of the campus and certain portions of, whatever we can that the subsidy allows for. So sometimes you see a small amount locally here, but really it offsets by the revenues that come in through Article 3.
I guess I would also add, if you don't mind, Jake, very quickly, we believe in putting our students to work for our larger community, but for also our school community, so that you'll see, for example, our summer youth employment program, which is funded here locally, works with our facilities folks in the summer to employ students so they get a paycheck, but they're also working on school related, whether that be painting or construction or cleanup or things of that nature, that helps take some things off the table so our facilities folks can concentrate on their lists over the summer. So it's an important part of how we view our role in the school community.
Rob, could you just tell us how many individual programs you have?
Right now, we're at 20 programs that we offer. There may be, again, we have state approval, prior state approval for as many as 10 new ones at the Edward Little site on Fall 23. Again, that will be a discussion for a different time, but there's a lot of opportunity there.
That's great.
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Callahan. It's nice to see you again, by the way.
Same.
So while we were having technical difficulties, I did a quick read of the memo and highlighted a couple of things. And I just would like the opportunity to just point this out. So in your memo, it says that enrollment for the 2021-2022 increased from the previous year by 54 students for a total of 778 total enrollments. It also says that we remain proud of the fact that state reporting tells us that we have a 95% completion rate after graduation, and that students earn over 750 industry credentials last year. And then also that LRTC student cost per pupil remains the second lowest. I'm going to repeat that, the second lowest amongst the 26 other CTE schools. Now, when I look at the budget and I look at the bottom line for the budget for our LRTC program, it is the outside of school administration, it is only an increase of 2.2%, 83,558. I got to tell you, when we talk about graduation rates in our community, when we talk about economic development, and we talk about the good things that are happening in our community, this right here is the good thing that's happening in our community. This, to me, is something that we need to point out and speak loudly and proudly about in our community. And to be honest with you, with the number of increases everywhere, that we only see a 2.2%, I think you should get more. I think this is how we see our graduation rate go. I think this is how we improve our community. And I just want to thank you and commend you for a phenomenal job that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess I would just say, I would like to return the gratitude, because so much of that is possible with the partnerships that we have. And again, I mentioned something, for example, with our middle school. We do a lot of work with our adult ed programming. I've never, in all the years I've been here in Lewiston, I've never picked up the phone and called a local employer and said, I need something, need a favor, I need some material, and been said no to, never. And I think this speaks to the commitment our community has to the center and what it does. So much of what you're seeing there is a result of that partnership.
Others from the committee. Ms. Whitlow.
So when will when will their wing open up? Do you know?
My understanding is that they are set to begin classes in the fall of 2023.
Wow. And that will be under our budget. Is that how that's going to work?
So just to walk back a little bit, LRTC is really the franchise, so to speak, for CTE in Androscoggin County, right? So we serve students from all over the county, including in Auburn. Lewiston is the fiscal agent for LRTC. So I work with Bill and Adam and their office to make sure that we're reporting our state funding and expending it appropriately. As part of the expansion that we're anticipating in Auburn, we've, like I said, written 10 program approval forms, which the good news is that when they are submitted and approved and we've received approval from the commissioner, they come with everything, all the funding required to start the program on day one. And that didn't used to be the case. That since we talked about that last, that used to be the case. There used to be a 2-year lag. Now it comes on day one, with the exception of equipment, as I mentioned to you. So that's something that we're working on now to identify commitment from local employers, to source grant funding and things of that nature, to minimize the impact of that equipment investment that we're going to need to make. And it's going to be considerable. But again, we've not had anybody say no there either. But like I said, in terms of instructional supplies and teacher costs and things of that nature, that's afforded in the EPS formula for CTE once you have approval.
So when they do open, do you see that we'll have the opportunity to have more Lewiston students be able to take these courses?
Yes. Basically, the way that it works is the superintendents and I sit a few times every year, and we have what we call a cooperative agreement. And that basically dictates the enrollment formula that I use. So if I have, those 6 schools, I have so many for each of the sending schools. And that will be something that we'll sit over the course of the coming months and sort of negotiate what those will look like. But certainly there'll be ample opportunity for Lewiston students to access the programming on the Edward Little campus.
And do you expect that the courses that'll be over at EL will be different, completely different courses than offered here, or maybe some of the same, depending on interest?
So there'll be a mix. And basically, we base that on a couple of things. When, as part of your approval process, you need to go out and talk to your local business community. So some of them will tell you, you're doing just about right in terms of what I need in terms of graduates. I'm able to hire the students that I'd like and things of that nature. Others would tell you, I could use more. So some of that programming may be duplicated. For example, the Green Ladle, again, we get 90 applications from students every year for 30 seats. We also, as part of that, the second leg of that, so you have your community piece, you also have your student surveys. And our students tell us, these are things we'd be interested. So some of the programming will be repetitive, but by and large, it's going to be new. And we're looking at programs like composite machining, biomedical, cosmetology, firefighting, EMT, an expansion of our 9th and 10th grade exploration programs, one in the trades and one in medical. So those are the kinds of things that we're eyeballing right now in terms of standing those new programs up.
Mr. Gopal.
Just to clarify, they will not be competitive programs, they'll be complementary.
So, right, they will work in unison under LRTC sort of umbrella. So we'll recruit students for all of those programs across, and again, a student from Lewiston may go across the river if they had a firefighting program there, for example, and they'll continue to send students to the Lewiston campus.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
I just want to chime in quickly. So part of what Rob was saying about being the franchise, even if schools like Auburn in this case, or other schools want to open career and technical education programs and access the funding, it all funnels through the region, which happens to be LRTC. So if, for example, if another school wanted to expand and add an automotive shop to their high school, they can do that. They have to pay all of those costs locally. If they want subsidy and have it connected, it has to go through the region. So even these rooms over at EL that are being discussed, and we'll work on it cooperatively, they'll all funnel through Rob's oversight and his team, and they will be in effect a satellite campus of LRTC, but underneath the umbrella of LRTC. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that.
Thank you. I've actually learned a lot about LRTC tonight, just listening to you speak. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could you explain your process on how you pick the students? Because it sounds like you're going to have a lot this year.
Yeah. So it's a great question. We, as I said, do a couple of things. We do as much as we can to try to introduce students in their middle school experience to understanding our opportunities. We do some summer camps. We do some February and April type camps. And then as they get into 9th and 10th grades, we offer things like a mentorship program where they can come and spend every other Friday with us. They also get the tours that I just mentioned from last week, where it's a full day exposure, and they get to choose a series of programs that they can go and visit. They see demonstrations from our current students and what they're doing in a given day. And based on the information they gather from those, they get a chance to fill out an application. We funnel those applications into first choice, second choice kinds of files. And again, they talk about what their motivation is. They talk about, their connection and what they would like to do with that training once they leave us. And then we sit and work with the guidance counselors to try to make sure that we place the very best and make the very best fits that we can. So that, again, it's really contingent upon what we can learn about students in those visits, and also the relationship that those students have with their guidance counselors from the various schools. The good news is we have a great set of guidance partners. They really know their students and know what they're interested in. So we have a lot of good placements. The difficult part comes in saying no. For a student that absolutely wants a nursing program and we don't have any more seats. I would also add that many, if not most of our programs, there's a cap set by the state. So nursing is a great example where we can only have 16 seats because it's dictated by the clinical supervision we need when they go out into the hospital and the nursing homes to do their clinical rotations. So there's a hard cap and I can't enroll above 16 per class. What that means is, again, we say no, or we offer second choices more than we'd like. And again, that was sort of the genesis 5 or 6 years ago as we began this conversation with our partners in Auburn to figure out how do we expand that set of offerings or go into offerings that we don't currently have. We have a lot of students, for example, that ask for cosmetology or firefighting, and we have nothing that's really even close to that. So we've built out those kind of programmatic aspects.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you, Rob. I know that it was only just a few years ago that we got the plumbing program up and running. And I've currently got 3 of your graduates working for me full time, and they are really succeeding. And it's really considering the workforce challenges that every business has. The fact that you guys are producing kids that have the interest and have the ability to move right into industry, it's really encouraging. It's something that's been lacking for quite some time, and keep up the good work because we need all the help we can get. So.
Well, thank you. I know they love what they're doing. And again, I think it speaks to the power of what CTE has for high school age kids. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
We'll move to Lewiston Adult Ed.
And coming up to the podium is Jen Tyner, Director of Adult Ed, and looks like Mr. Grant has some documents he's going to share with us.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Scott?
we were given 2 line item papers when we arrived this evening. Is that the adult education one? I just want to just state that publicly. Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Bill.
So that goes in tab J, the financials.
Want to start by just thanking everyone for giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight about adult education. My name is Jennifer Tyner, and I am the director for Lewiston Adult Education and actually share directorship with Auburn Adult Ed as well. So I approached this evening's presentation to include some general information about adult education programming. I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to kind of see the scope, the breadth and scope of the programming that we offer through adult education. And then on the back of the handout, you'll see there's a little more information regarding the budget to give you some context for that. So I wanted to start just by sharing with you our mission for adult education. We are obviously part of the Lewiston Public Schools District, but we do serve adult learners in our community. And so the adult education mission is to provide relevant learning programs and accessible sites to equip the community with the tools necessary to cultivate their full intellectual, occupational, and personal potential, to contribute to the economic strength of the community and participate as informed members of society. So similar to some of what you heard Rob talk about tonight in terms of CTE work, adult education really looks at helping learners to build their academic skills and to achieve academic credentials. But also we play a very important role in the community in terms of economic development and doing workforce training. In addition to what many of you also will recognize through our brochure, which is our enrichment offerings. So you can see, just wanted to include a couple of pictures of the learners so you could see them. Those were all taken between last June and this fall. So it kind of covers the different types of programming that we run. And I wanted to make sure to include just a brief description of the 3 types of programs so that you could see sort of the scope of what we do. So for our academic programs, you'll see that we do a significant amount of English language instruction for our newcomers in our state. We also do adult basic education through HiSET or high school equivalency preparation. Then we have our college transitions or our MCCA program. So we help learners in our community who are looking to go on to post-secondary education. So instead of having to sign up for some remedial classes at the college campuses, they can take a college transitions class for free and learn all about, kind of remind themselves of the math that they may not have used in a few years, or how to write a thesis statement and a research paper. And we also do a significant amount of work with those learners in terms of how to apply to schools, to visit schools, and to look at the financial aid process and how they can access some scholarship to help them with the cost of post-secondary education. We have a model of education in adult education that includes an integration model. So we look at really combining in all layers of our programming, we look to combine the academic skills that the students need along with the work readiness skills for whatever their career path might be. And so we call that an integration of education and training. It's an IET model. And we also do some programming at the Androscoggin County Jail for academic preparation. For workforce, we have a wide variety of workforce offerings. You'll see some of those listed on the back side once we get there. But all of our workforce opportunities are connected with local partners. So we have local employers with whom we work, and every learner completes a workforce training program with some credential of value that goes along with that workforce training opportunity. And then, of course, we have our enrichment classes. We love the fact that we're seeing more and more enrollment in our enrichment classes now, since we're kind of coming out of the pandemic a little bit more. So we're seeing more faces come in person to the Learning Center in the evenings. And we're really excited about that. We're hoping we can continue to build back that program. So I shared at the bottom of the first page just some enrollment information so you could get a sense of the breakdown of which classes, sort of how the numbers fit within each of those categories of classes. And on the backside, I really wanted to try to connect some of the work that we do in adult education to the goals that the board has expressed. So you can see that in terms of improving instruction, we in adult education have returned to, quote, normal, whatever normal really is outside of a pandemic. But we have worked to incorporate some best practices that we learned from the pandemic. So we do have a large offering of courses that are in person, but we also recognized during the pandemic that even before the pandemic, we had several people in our community who could not access programming because they have barriers like transportation and childcare that really limit their ability to take courses when they're available on site. So we've maintained having opportunities for synchronous and asynchronous learning in our school. We've also begun to utilize more, a couple of software platforms that help with English language instruction. So students can take an English language class at the center and then supplement at home with Burlington English or NGen. Burlington English is a program. It actually is very closely tied to CASAS, which is our assessment tool that we use to measure student growth over time. And NGen is actually used to be called Voxy NGen. Now it's just NGen. They've changed the name, but it's an English platform that's really geared towards sector specific language building. So if I had a learner come through the program who wanted to work in, let's say culinary, there's a course that they can register for in NGen that will actually walk them through all of the language that they would need, sort of pre-taught language, to be able to access the curriculum for culinary training. And of course, we've continued to do a lot with digital literacy skills. A lot of our learners need a lot of help to know and to understand how to use the technology, how to use email, how to do some of those basic skills. So we've incorporated that into our intake process. So every learner gets that as soon as they walk into the center. Again, the integrated program design, which we just continue to develop. Anytime we develop a new program, we're really looking at how do we integrate the academic skills in English, reading, writing, and math, along with the work readiness or the soft skills that our employers and our community have identified as essential for success, along with sector-specific and transferable skills. So we're really trying to create programs that are comprehensive and include all of those pieces of instruction. And we are looking to continue to build more connections with our community partners. I think the pandemic really kind of made all of us a little bit isolated, and it really had a toll on the partnerships, because Lewiston Adult Education has always been very integral in our community. And I think many of the partners have always found us to be really accessible, but when the doors were shut, that definitely had an impact on relationships. So one of our priorities moving forward into the rest of this year and into next year is to really try to reconnect with our partners and make sure they know we are here, we are open, we are looking for continued partnerships. We want to continue to focus on equity. So we really look at how do we take our learners, and we're serving primarily unemployed, underemployed, or immigrant learners who are really trying to find their place here. And so how do we help develop programs that are really going to support them in their pathway and in their goals? And so in that equity lens, I have given you a list of some of the workforce programs that we've developed that definitely have a piece of that IET, where we're trying to really work with our newcomers to help them to be able to access those trainings so that they can go to work when they are able to go to work. So we have construction, we have healthcare, which includes not just your traditional CNA, but a PSA, patient safety attendant, and patient service rep program. Culinary, which we are very fortunate to have a partnership with LRTC, and Chef Danny is helping us with our culinary program. We have computer support specialist program, so IT focus for those folks who want to work either in a call center or in some kind of help desk setting. We did work ready with the Maine College of Health Professions. As they taught the medical assisting component, we taught work readiness skills. And we also have a course that we're working specifically with dining services at Bates College. And we are doing some on-site instruction there twice a week so that we can work with their employees who are wanting to learn English And they're providing us with a space on campus to do that. So that's been very exciting. This past year, we piloted an integrated micro badge as part of the computer support specialist program that was with support from the Lumina Foundation. And that's not uncommon in adult education, that we work with funders and grants. You'll see that a little further down on the page. So in addition to what we get for support from our local dollars, we're always leveraging additional funding sources. And what was really exciting about that project is that we had an opportunity to partner not just with the Lumina Foundation, but with the college system. And so the University of Maine system actually is recognizing that computer support specialist badge for credit. So any of our learners who look to go on to school would have that badge recognized, not only by local employers, but through the college system. And here locally, we're also looking to grow some pathways to graduation. So, you know, we have a pretty robust HiSET program, which for those of you not familiar with that acronym, it's the high school equivalency test. It used to be called the GED. It's the same type of credential, means the same thing, it's just a different name. But we're actually looking to try to bring back some of our adult diploma pathways. We do recognize that we have a role to play here, looking at students who might be aging out of school before they've had an opportunity to complete all of their credits. And if they're close and adult diploma is a preferred credential, we should have the ability to run that in-house. So I've been working with the partners over at the high school to try to look at how we can start piloting more adult diploma options moving into this late spring into summer for those folks. So that gives you a context of programming, some information around our goals for this past year and into next. And the last part is really probably what you've been most excited to hear about, which is the budget. So you'll see from the paperwork that was provided to you that for FY23, our budget is budget neutral. So we are not asking for a local increase in this year's budget. I've provided the breakdown so you can see how the local share will be the same, the ask will be the same. I've included the state subsidy that was awarded last year compared to this year. Again, that's an estimate for this year, but it'll probably come in pretty close to that. And then we've been fortunate to be able to leverage some of our fund balance that we've accrued over the years to help offset some of the expenses. And so we will look to do that again this year. And you can see below, I put a little disclaimer there that says the increase to the fund balance is due both to a decrease in the subsidy for FY23, but as well as an increase in salary and of course benefits. And so when you don't ask for a local increase, you have to make up that difference somewhere. So that's where we're asking for that difference. And I just also wanted to make note that adult education is a separate article, but it does support general purpose aid through the reimbursement of programming for 16 to 20-year-old students. So you will see that in the records. And that we do have a significant number of grants and private contracts that we also leverage to support our programming. And that amount comes in well over $500,000.
Thank you, Jen.
Questions from the committee? Ms. Whitlaw.
You had mentioned the adult diplomas. Is that only for like 21 and older? Or could it be 18?
Well, adult education is for anyone 17 and up. So we would obviously we would want to make sure that all students are able to access their traditional high school programming. But if the student services team felt like it was an appropriate placement, we wouldn't refuse an 17, 18 or up.
And my other question was just looking at the fund balance. So you guys don't have fund balance isn't attached to our regular budget?
It functions separately. They have their own, because of the constructs being outside the articles and outside of that specific area of local funding. In the warrant article that goes out, adult education gets its own subsection for the referendum. And so it functions in, I don't want to say in isolation because of there's some crossover with fundings, but from a local when you pay your tax perspective, but from a warrant article, unspent funds, things of that nature, it's all on its own.
I just want to thank you for not asking for an increase. That was very nice of you.
Well, you're very welcome.
Mr. Gopal.
Could you explain to me the relationship with the Auburn Adult Education?
The relationship with what?
Auburn.
Auburn, yes. So Auburn and Lewiston share a director, which is me. So I am in Auburn roughly 15 hours a week and in Lewiston the rest of the time that's required. And we actually have an agreement, and Lewiston invoices Auburn for a portion of my salary and benefits.
Could you explain again, the programs or are different things offered in Auburn?
Oh, okay, sure, yes. So our programs are not combined. They're separate programs. The only thing they really share is me, but we leverage the programming from across the river. The Auburn Adult Ed program has a very robust adult diploma program. And that serves a lot of very young people, age 17 to 20. So they have a very large adult diploma program in Auburn. And since Lewiston has not been running an adult diploma program, we will often make referrals over to Auburn from Lewiston. Some of our students have a hard time getting over to Auburn in the evening. So it doesn't catch everyone who might be looking for that type of program, because transportation obviously is still a barrier for a lot of young people who don't have licenses. Other than that, we function we do a lot of the same things. There's a much smaller component of workforce training in Auburn at this point, mostly because we don't have access to the CTE site like we will in FY23. So I see that there's potential to grow that in Auburn.
Anyone else? Thank you, Jen.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Jen.
The next item on the agenda is a discussion of Article 2, Special Education.
I'm going to ask Director Kirsten Crafts to come up to do this presentation. I will share real quickly the slides with some context. So Ms. Crafts is going to give you a pretty detailed explanation around special education systemically. I'll put her slideshow up here in just a minute. But also in the budget presentation, as you know, this is an area of focus that we really want to change some things structurally and get better. But we've also been able to field a number of questions that have come up throughout our prior presentation. So she's worked to insert questions that have come up with answers, some information about each individual school. And then we have a component built around some of the changes we're looking to make, the ways in which we're looking to pay for them. And I'm hopeful that we can end on a positive note because of the potential reductions that we have found that we want to share tonight to make sure there's context for it. Just real quickly before we jump to her slides, and she'll cover some of this, so I'm more or less going to zip through, but you'll see, like you see in other articles, salary increases, benefits increases. There's a reorganization of some positions and new programming, which we'll walk through. You'll see special ed teacher stipends. That's one of those negotiation items that's in discussion. A return of supplies that had been pushed out to ESSER funds that are being put back in this particular request. And just to mention that the stipends, so while I say you'll see them in there, the stipends for special ed and ELL as a whole item was over $400,000 as part of that negotiated item. And just as a reflective note, the 2/3 of that would be in Article 2 under special education. So it's a significant number when you see the increases. So special education summer school, or I sometimes refer to it as ESY, that is in here at about $140,000. I mentioned in prior conversation that we wanted to add a special education teacher at next step. That is in here. And then when we start to get into some other components, I think it's important to note that when we talked about growing programming and things that we can do in-house so that we don't send it away, that's things that we want to do here at Connors. So you'll see a bump in Connors, and also know that that's a growth in cost. And so I don't take too much of your thunder. I will switch slideshows and jump right in.
Turn the button on. So I passed out the slides. Sorry, you can't see them very well, but I thought that maybe if you wanted to, you could write notes next to the slide while I talk, and then at the end we can go over it because I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. All right, so I'll start with the first. You can move the slide, Jake. Yes. So Lewiston Public Schools Special Education Department. We have a total of 132 students currently right now. There are 351 staff members. So that includes our supervisors, our teachers, our ed techs, BHP, service providers, which would be occupational therapists, speech and language. I also put on here that we have 285 students currently that are serviced with 504 plans. So that sort of falls under the special ed realm, but not totally. Our special ed supervisors K to 8 are currently taking care of the 504 plans. So I thought I'd put that in there.
But just for context, and some of that might have some overlap, but that's, again, 1,132 with IEPs and 285 with 504 plans.
So vision and goals. These are my personal vision and goals, but I think they align perfectly with the districts and what everybody has said when, we've gotten together with the management team, our administrative team in the district. When I first started this position, I think it was like the end of September, our audit people were here. So the second weekend, I got to spend the whole week with them and go around to all the schools. And I had been a part of the audit team last year for curriculum and instruction, not knowing that I was going to be part of this, but it was a very cool experience. I felt like what they were suggesting is things that I probably would have suggested as well. So everything really that I've put on my vision and goals is aligned with that, but also aligned with the district goals. It is a progression, in my opinion. So restructuring and reallocation of funds, that's something that I've been working on since I started this position. Structural changes in administration, you'll see some asks for that tonight. Those are things that I personally believe, being in the district for the last 17 years, I think our special education department will work much smoother and within the district if these changes happen. And I put just to improve the overall functionality of the department. That's really what I'm trying to do so that we don't have to constantly work in circles, that we can work better and get to a point where we can improve our teaching and learning. I put in here the BCBA, the board certified behavioral analysis. We have one right now at Geiger, Farwell, added one at Connors for next year, LMS and LHS. Typically in the past, and it was noted in the audit that they supported primarily just the RISE program. In the audit, they suggested that they help with building-wide behavior management, and I agree with that. My hope would be if we had more in buildings that they could help out our administrators, and I think I said this the other night a little bit, with behavior management and to promote school safety, because that is something I think we know needs to be worked on. I've already cut 18 vacant positions after going through every one-to-one, everything that I could to see what was needed to create the new programming at Connors. It is there, those positions are already currently posted and we're looking to hire for them next year. And I can explain more about that later if you're not aware of, exactly what it looks like. As of, I think last Friday, we went over moving salaries from our local entitlement grant, which we paid 20% in interest over to city budget. We're just going to put our outplacement costs into the local entitlement grant to save 16%. So that's a total of $146,000 just by making that move.
Kirsten, can you pause on that?
Yep.
We've talked about this a little bit with the title funds and how because of where the money comes from, the benefits costs are substantially higher than if they were local. We found this and in this move, so we already spend this whole pie of money on special education. And if we cut the pie in half of it is salary and those benefits. When they land in local entitlement, they're 16% more expensive than the other half of the pie. So locally, this is just smart budgeting, maximizing our funds. If we put the other costs in local entitlement, we don't pay that 16%. And we still get the whole pie. So it's a savings of $146,000 through an accounting practice and not paying extra for benefits and fringe that we otherwise have to pay because of where it lands in the budget. And this is very much known and something that we have uncovered for ourselves that will lead to some significant savings without compromising programming.
Correct. New programming at Connors next school year. If it was up and fully staffed, we could serve up to 39 students here in district. Granted, we have a waiting list right now that we can't avoid. We need to program for students that are on that wait list. And we have a bunch of kids that are outplaced, but these are 39 more slots than we didn't have. So to move in the right direction. Next step would be to increase the quality and skill level of the staff, special education staff. Currently, right now, I started the process. Things have gotten a little chaotic so far, but I've ordered all the materials for the special education supervisors to become involved in the foundational reading that's going to take place next year, K-6, so that they can support the special ed teachers through that process, as far as making sure that the kids are, and the teaching, it's happening, that is a successful program to improve our special ed students and their literacy skills as well. Co-teaching PD training. I've been working with the instructional specialists for the district. I wrote a plan for co-teaching for next year. This will be in pockets because I want to be mindful that teachers have a lot on their plate. Right now, currently thinking about implementing it in 5th and 6th grade levels and potentially in some places, some schools, and you'll see that later, as well as the middle school, which they've been doing it this year already. So that'll be continuation. And then the high school with the core 4 general level classes. And that will be, planned out. They'll have training, asynchronous, synchronous, make sure that it's really thought well out in that teachers have planning period time together, and it's not just thrown together last minute. I want to make sure that it's done well. We're going to use data to inform our instruction and progress monitor student growth. We have a program right now, iReady, that can do that. Looking to increase that more. Ongoing IEP training that was suggested in the audit. I've been working with some people from the state level as far as getting trainings. They are offering free trainings. I try to get the supervisors on board with that as much as possible when time permits, but I just see that continuing on. TCI trainers in all school buildings to train people in therapeutic crisis management throughout the school year as needed. So I took some ESSER funds and having TCI, the company, come here April 4th through the 8th and train 10 people in-house. There'll be 1 to 2 people from every school building that will be able to do this, and they will be able to train more staff. Throughout the year when we hire new BHPs or ed techs and they don't have that training, typically you have to wait until the summer to get that done. We want to do that in the moment more. And just having therapeutic crisis management, if you know how to do that, any teacher, you're going to have better results dealing with kids. So that would be the hope, is to promote that.
And that's not just crisis management, it's de-escalation,
Yes.
it's preventative measures, it's approach, it's how we work with kids in general and each other. I don't want to throw people off with crisis management or crisis intervention programming. It's very beneficial. I don't know if Ms. Scott wants to speak to it. She's probably been trained in that or something like it several times. It's a highly effective tool.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm glad to see that you're doing that because it is extremely helpful. It is very good in preventative work so that you can help some of the kids that you already know can escalate very quickly into crisis mode, unfortunately. And I particularly work with 4 and 5-year-olds, and having this training and to be able to navigate and knowing ahead of time is it just makes a whole difference in the day. And so I'm happy to see that. Thank you.
And so then improve teaching and learning. Next year, we'll be looking at the foundational reading literacy work that'll be implemented in the district. I would like our special ed supervisors to be able to support that with special ed teachers, co-teaching implementation K-12 where appropriate. As I mentioned, it won't be in all grades and it'll be in different pockets of the school because I want to make sure it's done well. Use the data to drive individualized instruction for special education students K-12. So that would be looking at the iReady program and really pulling that data to write our IEP goals and objectives to make sure that the kids are getting what they need and it's individualized. That's something I would like to do with them if I had more time. Conduct a review of all special education curriculum. So I came into a department, a rather large department that already has curriculum, and I would really like to look and see what, take the time to go through that and see what's working, what's not working, and just familiarize myself with that. And also provide PD to execute the curriculum. So sometimes I feel like, we buy these programs and we're like, here, do this. And without really having the actual PD to teach the teachers and make sure it's going well, being implemented in the right way and that it's going well. Next. Oh. Did you skip one? Okay, good. I'm like, oh, did you take it out? So the current structure, and I'm going to go over this just so that you understand what a basic day sort of looks like for the central office staff at Dingley and how we are trying to support our supervisors and our students and our programs in the district. Currently, there's me, the director. I oversee the assistant director and some of the special education supervisors. Currently, my assistant, Anna, I don't know if you want to raise your hand, oversee, her and I split the schools. I also have a district clinical supervisor, Laura Lee, if you want to raise your hand. She oversees the in-house day treatment programs. And I also have a district outplacement coordinator, Deb Davis, who is not here tonight, but she oversees all of the students that are outplaced in the district right now. And I believe we have 126, but there's a slide for that. And then I just put many other responsibilities. Then Anna, the assistant director, she oversees the schools that I do not oversee. She also oversees our intervention coordinator or the district intervention coordinator, which is right below. She supervises all the BCBAs in the district, which is quite a lot of time for her. It's, meeting after meeting after meeting every week to support them because they need that as well. And she is also doing the CDS oversight right now for the placements for the kiddos that are coming in. And many other responsibilities. So underneath, I put the district clinical supervisor and the district intervention coordinator. Laura Lee oversees all of the in-house day treatment programs. So McMahon, the kids that are, well, we're going to have a 7th through 12th program next year. We haven't really said publicly where it's going to be, but that's in the making. She's helping write the program book for that right now. She's also been helping with all of the outplacements. She will go to meetings and help, make sure that the kids are having their placement meetings and everything's in line. District intervention coordinator, Cassidy, she's not here tonight. That was a new position we added this year. I think like my first couple weeks on, because for the DOJ, we had to, for the agreement, we had to come up with a way to document all of our abbreviated days because we got in trouble for that. So we took a position that was meant for an administrative position for the 7th and 8th grade day treatment program that did not happen last year and created her position. So what she does is she tracks all of the students on abbreviated days. And as a part of that, she needs to conduct FBAs and assist programming for students. She's the liaison between, Tree Street for tutoring and myself, Jake sometimes, because she also oversees students that are not in special ed. I'm trying to think what else she does. She does quite a bit. I mean, and it's been a good thing actually, because there's a lot of kids that sort of fell off the radar and were not always accounted for, not because we didn't want to, but because everybody's so busy. And this has really made it so that she needs to pay close attention to, okay, where's this kid? What's he doing? And so we're really getting everybody doing at least something. It's not always perfect. And sometimes we have to do tutoring and there's no way around it, but we're doing it. So.
Yeah, so sometimes these are the students that they land in a place where they need assessments, and they really can't be in school right now for one reason or another. Maybe they've been expelled. Maybe they've had things come up in their world that doesn't allow them to attend school, or they're really struggling to because of their current level of need. In years past, sometimes these students would land like at the Dingley School, which was part of a day, 4 days a week. And it was an effort to keep kids moving educationally and having some routine. The Department of Justice, they deem that to be an inappropriate process, and that students should be in school full-time each day. And so any student who is not, there's a very specific criteria for us to track those students and have meetings that cycle to make sure we're doing all we can to re-engage students with school. And so that's a big piece of what that position is doing.
So moving on, Connors Elementary. Total 109 special education students currently enrolled at Connors. Their special education programming that they have here, they have resource rooms. They have self-contained K-3 behavior programs. I reallocated the funds, as I mentioned before, with vacant positions to add the 4 through 6 next year. So it'll be a self-contained behavior room K-6. The RISE K-2. So basically, with the auditors, the first couple weeks that I was here in looking at all of the different spaces in this building, realized really quickly that there was these beautiful classrooms that were not being used, that had, washing machines, dryers, bathrooms, and could really program for kids. So I worked with the administration here, and we came up with a plan to next year have a RISE program, K-2 and 3 to 6, and then an FLS RISE program, K-2 and 3 to 6. So those three, well, the self-contained, adding the 4 through 6, and then the RISE K-2 and the RISE 3 to 6, and the FLS RISE K-2 and FLS RISE 3 to 6. If those were fully staffed and we had all of the kids in there, we could serve up to 39 kids here. That's what I talked about earlier. So that's 39 kids that would not have to go to an outplaced school. And we do have the numbers to support that they need that right now.
Yeah, just to reiterate, we have this wait list, we have the need, we have students that are either at an outplacement or waiting for an outplacement, where we pay tuition costs, we pay transportation costs. It's very expensive, and the students have to transition out every day. Excuse me. If we can find the space and we have the supports we need to get these programs up and running, that's that area we talk about potential cost savings. So it kind of takes some money to, in the end, save some funds, but also I think more importantly, to better program for our kids in-house so they're not transitioning elsewhere every day.
Yeah, and I would add to that too, their resource rooms here, there are kids that are waiting for outplacements at Margaret Murphy or Woodford's. And they're being housed in these resource rooms, which really is not appropriate because they need more. If these programs are already up and running now, those kids could be in those classrooms right now, getting the services they need. But I think it just makes things run smoother, and the program will be best for all kids, really. So that's that. I also added a full-time clinician just because they needed more in order to support the self-contained K-3 and then 4 to 6 classroom. That will split with Montello, the clinician will, because they have a need there to have another clinician. And then a full-time BCBA. So in order to have these programs up and running, RISE and FLS, you need to have a behavioral analyst in order to do that. And that behavioral analyst can also assist in, like I mentioned before, the everyday behavior management of the building, which I think is something that everyone has said that we need, and it would promote school safety. I also put there that the BCBA clinician positions will allow for Section 65 and Section 68 billing, and I can get into that further as we go on, but that's part of my proposal and how to bring revenue in order to pay for these positions. Farwell. Farwell Elementary School, 104 special ed students. Special ed programming, they have resource rooms, they have Rise K-2. I took vacant positions out of there, a few, to pay for some of the other positions that I added on at Connors. Rise 3-6, they have an FLS Rise K-2 and an FLS Rise 3-6, and a full-time BCBA already there. So not really looking to add anything there. We have some vacant positions where we could add more kids in if we get staff that are qualified to take the positions. Geiger. So Geiger Elementary has 105 special education students. Programming for Rise, they have K-3 and 4-6. They do not have the FLS Rise, they just have Rise. They have a full-time BCBA there right now. And that person also helps support at Farwell because there's more cohorts at Farwell than there are at Geiger. They have resource rooms. We took 3 vacant ed tech positions at the beginning, when I started this position, converted that to an extra teacher so that they can implement co-teaching next year. They are looking at doing it grade 5 through 6. And then the next year, maybe going on to 3 through 4 and expanding that way. So we're going to start doing it in small doses so that it's done right. McMahon, 133 special education students there. You'll notice that's a little bit higher than the others. It's because they have the day treatment program there. Their special education programming is resource rooms. Also looking to implement the co-teaching in grades 5 through 6 where possible next year. I want to be mindful of the teachers. I know they have a lot on their plates. It's another thing. But after talking to, I had this conversation actually with Charlotte, the principal, thought maybe 5-6 would be a good place to start for those that felt like they could take it on because they will not have to do the illustrative math training next year because they already have the 3 through 4 teachers will be doing that. So again, just trying to be mindful of everything they have on their plates. Day treatment program, they currently have K through 7 because the 7th and 8th grade program didn't get up and running last year in time. Next year, it'll just be K to 6. They have no BCBA there. They consult with the LMS BCBA. So if they have a kid that needs to be looked at, they're thinking, oh, this kid is not placed right, or they need something a little bit more, they have to reach out to somebody at the middle school to come over and do the consult for them, which is, it's hard because the middle school person has a full caseload and they're also doing this for Montello at the same time. So that's again why I would like to add more behavioral specialists / BCBAs into the district to help with all of this. So our kids are placed appropriately and things just run smoother on a daily basis. Montello. Oh, skipped one. 117 special education kids. They have resource rooms. Talking to the special ed supervisor, we've decided that we're also going to look at implementing co-teaching 5 through 6. And I put where appropriate because I don't think everybody might be ready to do that yet or want to, but we're going to try to, at least start it in small pockets there. They're going to split the new clinician position next year with Connors from their reallocated funds. There is no BCBA currently there. They consult with the LMS BCBA as well.
Ms. Bowden, did you have a question?
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just curious why we don't have a BCBA at McMahon with such a large number of special education students, but we have one full-time at Geiger and at Farwell.
I would say that's because they have the RISE programs there and that's what they needed. They needed to hire the BCBA in order to get those up and start and running.
Okay.
That's what I talked about earlier too. Like I think that they can assist in behavior management in other places, but really they were brought in to serve those programs and get them up and running.
Okay.
I think that if they didn't have to switch or share amongst all schools and do consults, that they could really help out building wide because they'd have more time on their hands.
Thank you.
Laura Lee just shared that there are clinicians that are placed at McMahon because of the day treatment program, so they can provide some clinical support. Again, these shifts will be to better support everyone, but it's not that they're absent of clinical support, but it's not a BCBA.
Are we okay to go on to, okay, the middle school? All right, Lewiston Middle School, 163 special education students. The programming they have there is the RISE FLS program. They also have RISE. They have a full-time BCBA. I put in there that she consults with McMahon and Montello, as I mentioned before. They have resource rooms. They're continuing to implement co-teaching next year. This year, as a part of the DOJ requirements or agreement, the 7th and 8th grade teachers, the ELL special ed teachers went through the co-teaching training. And at the high school, it was ELL/regular ed teachers. But they'll be continuing to do that next year. And it might look a little bit different, but not too much different, but we'll continue that support and make sure that they have common planning time. I would like to be involved in it more if I had more time to get into buildings and oversee the teaching and learning, because I've been a regular ed teacher and a special ed teacher, and I actually co-taught. So I feel like I could offer some support with that. And I want to make sure that it's being done well and that they have the timing and the training and the support that they need to get that done. We're also adding the day treatment program next year for grades 7 and 8. You'll see an addition for a day treatment teacher that will oversee grades 7 and 8, 3 ed techs, and a full-time clinician. So that was an increase in the budget. Lewiston High School, 255 special education students. Special education programming includes RISE FLS, a full-time BCBA. That BCBA is supposed to consult with Connors Elementary School. We just hired one, but before that I was doing contracted services, somebody that was in there part-time. So now we have a full-time one there. Hopefully that will help out things a lot. They have resource rooms. Next year, we're looking at implementation of co-teaching 9 through 12 in the core content areas. We're looking at an expansion of the unified program. Currently, every morning they have unified PE where with the student helpers and the students. And we're looking at adding next year a history class that's co-taught with actually the students that are interested in pursuing an education degree, hopefully as the helpers. And we're also looking to do it in the unified arts. The day treatment program, we're going to add an additional teacher. We used to have 2 teachers, grades 9 through 12. It has been only 1 for the last couple of years. So add another one. And they currently have 3 ed techs. We need to add 1 more in order to have it up and running a full program that can service up to 20 students. They already have a full-time clinician. So the only real addition there is going to be that extra teacher and that extra ed tech, so they can add 10 more kids onto the caseload, roughly. Next Step High. Currently, there are 30 special education students there. It's grown over time. And so we have an LMS teacher and an LHS teacher case managing the kids. And we have an ed tech on site that consults with the teachers for the IEPs and the SDI. Next year, we need a teacher on site because it's gotten to that point that there's so many students and we need to have somebody there. Right now, we're making it work. We're making sure, that there's Zoom going on and that the SDI is provided for the students, but I think it'll work much better with an actual full-time teacher there. Outplaced students. So currently we have 126 kids that are outplaced in the district. You'll see the out-of-district costs. So the tuition is $4,692,322 for 1 year. On top of that, the transportation costs, $1,243,774. So you'll notice that there's an increase. I'm assuming because everything has increased. We also have a district outplacement coordinator for $88,950. That is sort of the liaison between the district and the outplacements. That person arranges for all the IEP meetings, does the written notices, facilitates transportation, et cetera.
Kirsten,
So-
can I just jump in real
Mhm.
quick? That district outplacement coordinator, this goes back years ago, I'd say 6, maybe 7 years ago, if I recall right. And the thinking was we had students in placements that we weren't real sure if they were ready to come back, if they could return, what would be the transition. So the idea was to spend some money so that we could potentially save some money and get our kids back home to us. So there was a dual purpose there. What we're finding is between lack of available positions elsewhere and our wanting to grow the ability to house them, educate them locally, is really based on that cost and lack of placements. So when we look at that total cost of over $6 million for 126 students, and everyone at the table knows me, I'm all for focusing on our most vulnerable, and whatever it takes, we're going to get it done. I think our kids deserve that. But when we're talking about students that have that kind of ratio of compensation, this is why Kirsten's saying, add this program at the middle school, grow this one at the high school, put the one in Connors, we can find the space. We're trying to be creative because those ratio numbers will reduce once we get things staffed in-house. But until that point, not only do you have the 126, you have another 40 on a waiting list.
Right.
And if you put those 40 on that list, you can imagine the cost. And we don't get to say next year if there's spaces for them that we're not going to send them. We have to send them to those placements. These students need to go to those spaces that are available. Right now, there's not a lot of space available. But with districts facing different challenges, I think a number of these special purpose outplaced schools are looking to grow their capacity because of what they can bill in tuition.
I think it should be noted too that we had, although there are kids leaving or graduating, but we have kids that are coming in through CDS with high needs every year. And I haven't been part of it, but Anna has let me know that they're higher than ever this year. So just be aware of that as well, because we're going to need to find places for them. And to the right of that, I just have the special programs nested within the district. That's sort of what Jake just talked about. So my thinking is by adding these classrooms within district, having them be like little satellite schools, or I don't know what we call them, but it's programming in different pockets of the district to keep kids in district to not only save money, but it's also, they get to be with their peers, and we save on the transportation costs. It just seems like it would be a win-win. And so that's sort of my thinking behind that. Next. So budget asks, my big budget ask, and I know it probably looks like I'm asking for a lot. I think that the overall functionality of the department, if you want it to work better, I think you do. That's why, the audit came about, and I've taken that very seriously. I have worked in the district a long time, and I think special ed has just gotten a lot harder as the years have gone on. And I truly believe that if you want this department to function and you want to do what's best in the best interest of the kids, we need to do some restructuring. So I've asked for a second assistant director because right now, currently Anna and I are splitting the schools. We don't have a supervisor at Geiger right now. It's a lot when you're managing every day and trying to pick up IEP meetings or, help with the supervision of the supervisors or, just anything. I feel like I cannot do the things that I really think that this department needs, and that is focusing on the systematic changes that need to happen in the implementation of the curriculum and working towards improving the teaching and learning for the entire special ed department, for the kids, most importantly. I put in here that allows director to manage systematic instructional changes. I talked about iReady earlier, co-teaching, improving the K-12 instruction. If I had a second director, I could also focus on the audit and making systematic improvements that were noted in there. And by having two assistants, they could manage the buildings and the supervision of the special education within the buildings. And it would allow me, like right now, I don't go to all of the buildings because I don't have time. I would like to be able to go in all of the buildings and say, oh, Is co-teaching being done well at McMahon? How is it going at Geiger? Like, and actually seeing it for myself. And I think that that's important as a leader if you show that you're invested and that the teachers know that you care and that you're checking up on them, basically. Mainecare billing specialist. I asked for this position because after reviewing the audit, I noticed that they mentioned Mainecare billing. So I reached out to our support person through EDMS. That's the person that we bill with for section 65 currently, which we're only doing at McMahon day treatment. They're short on clinicians this year, and the clinicians are a very pivotal role in that being done appropriately. So currently, when we ran the numbers with our person, so far we've only billed like 40 or 50,000 for the year. Years past, we went back 5 years. For section 65, it was close to 500,000. So we haven't even tapped into section 28 yet.
Can you pause just for a second?
Mhm.
Because of a lack of capacity, we're leaving $500,000 in unbilled revenue for our district annually because of capacity.
Yeah,
We talk about positions that can pay for themselves. If we can correct this, these positions, many of that she's mentioning on this slide, will be paid in full by submitting the correct paperwork for billing. It's currently not happening because we don't have capacity.
Yeah, and I've reached out to other schools because I was trying to debate, like, should we have the clinicians and the BCBAs do it? Do I need somebody to oversee it because we're so large? So I reached out to Auburn and asked them, how many BHPs do you have? And, not a lot. And we have 100 and I don't even know, between 120 and 130, depending on vacancies that we could be billing for that we're not. Well, some of them we are, but not all of them, only the ones at day treatment right now. But we have BHPs in every school building right now. And under that, I put the BCBA. So my thought is the Mainecare billing specialist would make sure that all of the paperwork's in order, go into all the buildings and make sure that the documentation is there, the hours for section 65, and then the minutes actually for section 28, making sure that it's done appropriately so that we submit the right stuff to EDMS and don't get audited. And the reason why I added the BCBA supervisor underneath that is because somebody needs to keep track of all of that for section 28. The clinicians can do that for, and the Mainecare specialist for section 65, but we're gonna need somebody that really can keep on top of that for the section 28. It's my understanding, I've never done it before, but it is my understanding that there's more, it needs to be documented more frequently than the section 65. So I think it's really important that we do that right. And I also put in here that that person could assist in overall behavioral needs in the district. My thinking is that currently we do not have a BCBA in Montello and McMahon. That person could oversee those two schools with consults, do the billing for the section 28, some other things. I have a list of things. I wrote a job description if it were to be approved. They could also complete FBAs for us. So every time we have a manifestation determination, and I apologize if you don't all know what that is, but if a student is suspended 10 days or more, or under, we have to hold it before 10 days, but you have to go through a manifestation. If it determines that it's a manifestation of their disability, we have to order an FBA to be completed, a functional behavior assessment. We also have to do that for our DOJ right now. The BCBA supervisor could conduct those FBAs. That would save us. So if I hire somebody like a psychologist to do that, it costs anywhere between $800 and $1,000 per student to complete an FBA. The BCBA supervisor, I don't know how much time they would have, but they could assist in that. So that would be a savings there as well for the district. And then the special education supervisors, I have asked for them to be moved to administrative positions. For stability purposes, I went back, I was a special education supervisor from 2015 to 2017, and I counted all the different supervisors since then in all the different buildings, and we've had 29 different supervisors. I know personally that when I was a special ed supervisor, I liked the job, but I felt like, in some cases, the assistant principals made more, and you're working the same amount of hours. the jobs are completely, to me, they're different, but they're not. It's the same amount of work. I think that that is probably one of the most important chairs in the entire department, more than mine, more than Anna. I feel like the consistency needs to be there. The teachers deserve that, the students deserve that, and the families deserve that. The teachers, I think about that, and just at the high school, there's probably been 5 since I was there. I don't think they're getting the same messages, not because people don't want to give the same messages, but people are different. And I just think that they deserve more. They deserve to have an administrator that knows the evaluation process, can oversee SIOP, can do all of those things. Not that they can't do that right now, but I think it's not always viewed in the same way. Not saying, I just feel like if we can keep supervisors for longer and keep them consistent, they'll have more time to do this, because after you're there a year, 2, 3 years, you become much better at your job. And right now that's just not happening because it's constantly changing. So that's that. We can explain more on that later, I guess.
Do you want me to jump to the next slide, or do you want me to do that?
Hmm?
So
You can do it.
you sure?
Yeah.
All right, bear with me. I tried something new. And I apologize if it's annoying or repetitive, but we'll try it. I can hit stop at any point in time, Mr. Chair, if you'd like. It's a presentation with me talking over it. We'll just try it. Dave, how do I? I want to make sure I put audio through the system if that's possible. Okay. Ms. Kraft, would you be willing to do that? I just plugged mine in because it's gonna die. Do you have the same? She should have the same link on hers.
Right here.
It says live on YouTube.
The reach.
Did it cut out or? What about, do you have visual too? Yeah. I should say I can plug in up there. Sorry, Dave, I forgot the audio may not do what I want it to do. And my laptop's about to.
Oh, okay. It's been a long time since I used that. Yeah, I'm older.
You may need to turn that mic off, Kirsten. Kirsten, you're gonna want to turn that mic off so it doesn't feedback.
What?
Turn off the mic so it doesn't create feedback. Kirsten, your messages are showing.
We'll take a 5-minute break while Dave works on this. Not to put any pressure.
District Intervention Coordinator. These are all the same information tonight.
Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute recess at 7:27.
Anytime. Have a good evening.
Want me to try it on that to see what it does? Yep.
We're not able to read, we're not able to make it on screen to be fair, kids.
Megan.
Our special education structure before the audit that informed our changes was essentially this. The district intervention coordinator. We learned a lot through the audit process and also assistant super.
We're back in session.
Hit play. Do you want to say anything about it or?
I just hope it's not too loud. And at any point in time, the chair or other members of the committee, please let us know if we need to shut it down.
To be as good as we need to be for our kids. Our special education structure before the audit that informed our changes was essentially this. We had an assistant director, and a district clinical supervisor. We then added from the Department of Justice a district intervention coordinator. These are all the same in appearance, but the district intervention coordinator is not quite the director level type role. Remember that we did multiple audits over the last few years through different components of special education programming, from structure to IEPs to consistency. We learned a lot through the audit process, and also Assistant Superintendent Karen Paquette and I, we did a lot of work last year and throughout the summer, really reviewing our strengths and the areas of growth that we could identify locally by talking to the people doing the work each day. Question is, what if we do nothing? Families and students, staff don't have an improved experience. Things would stay the same. There's a greater savings from what's already been found. The con is not enough capacity to do the work, leaving revenue on the table, no annual consistency, and transitions are disorganized. One of the things we're looking to add is a district BCBA supervisor. This would categorically grow the capacity to bring in revenue and support schools beyond special education. This could add to this team to support students school-wide, not just limited to special ed. And billing Mainecare, we've been talking to state supports that have identified with us between $400,000 and $500,000 that are being left on the table each year because we don't bill them. We don't have the capacity to bill it. But with this change, we would be adding to that. In addition, between some of the things that we can bill, but also the fact that we can conduct our own behavioral analysis assessments, that right now we're paying about $1,000 per assessment, would be big positives. The con is we're going to need to hire someone to assist with the Mainecare billing submissions. That one position is here. The primary responsibility of the staff would be Mainecare billing and coordination. Existing supports would assist with other operations, including billing for out-of-district work where possible. Pros is this gives the rest of the team the capacity to impact schools to better experience for students, families, and staff. In addition, there's a cost savings. The con, we're leaving a lot of money on the table because we're not billing. Staff space is really limited. Next major component of this ask is to create special services administrators. Turnover alert. We've had 29 different special education supervisors since 2015 alone. To improve what we do, we simply must have stability and communication in these positions. The roles and responsibilities of these folks to evaluate special ed staff, ed techs and teachers, coordinate all the building's IEPs and 504s, coordinate coverages. That's when teachers are out, but also when there's a spike in programming or a spike in need. Support specific programs that are very specialized. Complete written notice and submit them. This is a process that happens in some schools, but not in others. This will take some of the workload off our special ed teachers. Being a direct line for crisis support and parent contact to help mitigate and solve those problems when they come up. Giving someone that direct contact that has the ability to make decisions at the building level in the best need of the kids, knowing the staff. Help with coordination of transportation. Too often there's a lag in transportation communication because of the level of need that our folks have, but we don't have the staffing for it. This would help close that gap so that our administrators could take care of that. There's also concerns around compliance. As it sits right now in law, you need an administrator or a designee connected to every IEP meeting. Currently, we're operating off of a designee model, and I think we can do better. We also have ADA, IDEA, sections 28 and 65, and others areas of compliance that we need to be mindful of. Other roles and responsibilities include transition support for CDS families and partners. We've really missed the opportunity to help bridge student experiences and family connection to our schools. We've worked with our partners, we've gotten feedback from our partners, and one of the things that they say we need to do better with is those transition meetings. With this shift, we can shift the responsibility of who's in charge of that and have it be the local level where it's more relevant and it can involve the right people. In addition, these folks are charged with hiring all the open special ed positions in their building, and so many more. And the conversation will come up, well, why do this? I believe we need to do this for long-term consistency. Due to the specialized nature of the work, to build a program that has accurate IEPs, the ability to build capacity to make decisions and disseminate those, it just needs to make sense. Right now, when something comes up that might be specific to a small need, it channels all the way up to the director of special education. That just shouldn't happen. Those decisions should be able to be made because people are familiar with the programming, the law, the need, the school, the parents, everything. And those decisions should be just made and disseminated right at the school. We can build consistency as a district, but some of those decisions don't need to be at the top level, and they don't need to wait for a response because people are too busy to get back to them. We need to know who's in charge of each school. No one can be in 8 places at one time. And so all of these pieces will build together. It'll help improve teaching and learning, accountability, and growth support. The current situation. Everyone is running around putting up fires that shouldn't have started. Families wish they had a better and more consistent process to support their students, their transitions and needs, and oftentimes parents feel out of the loop. Students don't get the consistency they deserve, transitions aren't communicated well, and students can often feel out of the loop. Staff do not get the supervision and support they need for very specialized work. We've over budgeted positions for years because of disorganization. We do not effectively bill for revenue available to us, and we have no capacity for improvement. Here's what we want. If we make these changes while realizing cost reductions, the family, student, and staff experience will improve. Imagine clear communication that is considerate of the need of parents. Parents are informed by process and communication. Students getting what they need for services. Staff feeling like they have their head above water because they have support. Meanwhile, student and family experience improves. Revenues are generated, reducing the local cost burden. Staff stay with LPS because they have support. And special services administrators are woven into the fabric of schools. And as a result, we use the 3 audits from the last several years to inform change. We take steps we have never taken before. We lighten the load for teachers and ed techs because the rules don't keep changing. Decisions and decision-making is anchored in consistency, compliance, and compassion. So this is more what the model would look like. You would have your special ed director, the ask for an assistant director, a second assistant director. The district clinical supervisor oversees day treatment and other components of programs. A district board certified behavior analyst supervisor that oversees RISE and some other components of programs. And then we have the special services administrators. These would function at each building. This shift would essentially remove the special ed supervisor role and have the special services administrators. But the big question is, what's it cost? Here's a listing with position title and the associated cost. You have the BCBA supervisor at about $107,000. The special education assistant director at $117,000. Special ed lead secretary at about $70,000. And moving special ed supervisors to administration. We did the math on these, and that's about $62,000. And these shifts also include benefits. Grand total to these recommended changes is $357,146. So what's the savings? On the left side, we have reductions. On the right side, we have savings. 18 positions were reduced in the building of this budget. Director Krause was able to find 18 positions that she felt we could immediately do without, but would like to use those funds to roll into some of these changes. And while these things may generate revenue and shift costs overall, the new asks are less than half of those initially reduced positions. On top of that, first time we're sharing publicly because we wanted to take the time to vet these. There are 15 additional position reductions. These positions are things that we believe we can live without, given our specific enrollments. One constraint to that is we just have to be mindful in the future that if we need to have adaptive staff levels, we might have to come back and ask for things because we have trimmed everything out. What that means is if you have a group of students grow from year to year, we might have to add staff. And if we need to do so, we would bring that to the committee. The total of those reductions is $1.335 million. If you take out the new positions that we just mentioned, that $357,146, you have a savings of a grand total of $977,853. In addition, there's some savings that are potentially realized in the local entitlement. Currently, we have staff in local entitlement causes us to pay excess taxes and fees on those because of the structures of the funding. This shift, moving things to the local and moving some other things into local entitlement, would save us an additional $146,860. These reductions and changes result in over $1.12 million in savings. So while we're making an ask and we're looking for things, we're also finding ways to not only pay for those changes, but to save an additional large sum of money. I know it's a complex map, and I know there's a lot of things to consider. We thank you so much for your time, and we'll answer any questions you may have.
So I have so I want to add to this. While that's an incredible amount of savings, I want to make sure that you understand that I drew up this video in connection to savings and our district costs. But with the adding of programs at schools, that is a separate item. And so with the adding of programs at schools, I just did the math for you here. The total change in doing all this work, given the cost savings, is $95,907. I just want to be upfront with you about that. When you include the local programming, that is a change there. But I'm also reminded of something, I think it was Adam that said earlier when we were meeting either Friday or today. We see each other too much now. I don't know what day it is, but he said costs avoided are costs saved. And what we can't calculate when we do this is the 39 kids. Again, if we get the programs up and running and we put 39 kids in the Connors building that don't cost $30,000, $40,000+ a year to go elsewhere, 3 kids pays that bill. Never mind 39.
Some,
Go ahead, you can jump in.
some are up to 100, 120,000 per kid, depending on the program.
So I want to be real clear that in that graphic, I showed savings, and that was savings generated from a district position perspective. When you add the programs, there is a cost, but that cost is without keeping one kid from going elsewhere. Excuse me, that cost is without calculating the kids that don't go elsewhere, which is part of that, the phrase that I used about these things don't operate independently of each other. You know, they're not mutually exclusive. So if we do this work and then we have 3 students attend Connors at schools that might have otherwise been $40,000, $50,000, this exceeds what it costs to run the program with all of these reductions.
Mr. Gopal.
Thank you. Jake, a very effective presentation. As a visual learner, I suck a lot more in that way. Are any of the 33 reduced positions involve people losing jobs?
No, they do not. There's some shuffling, and most of it is positions that laid vacant that were unfilled. But I also want to add that when we don't have a good plan and things get really disorganized, I think for many years we took the approach of we need more people. Because of whatever was going on, we just needed more people. That will help us get the thing done. But really what was happening is there was so much disorganization structurally that people didn't even know what they were supposed to be doing. And Kirsten's really looked at that. And that's why I'm kind of all in on these changes, because I really think it makes us a better school department and better for our kids. But if we don't go all in this way, we'll be short on the other side. And so it's got this mixed feeling. And I think that the reason I'm all in on this is I've watched it now for a year in my current position, but I watched it for many years in my prior positions. And just the disorganization is so cumbersome to deal with. I think that we were literally throwing positions at problems because it just felt overwhelming. And if we had more capacity, it would get better. But we failed to look at the structure and realize that the structure was broken. And that's what's led to these problems and these holes in the dam.
Yes, Paul.
You mentioned again shuffling of positions. I'd like to get back to that. Are the people that would assume new positions going to be certified or qualified for these new positions? Is it just a job title? How are we working?
Yeah, so we all the work that we've done does not result in a reduction of force through our teachers' contract in any way, shape, or form. Some of it is reallocating things. So for one example might be from one school to another, but they're working in a similar capacity, but because of the space of the limited space in one building versus the space in another, or age groupings of our enrollments where we know we can save those funds from sending students elsewhere. So to answer your question, yes, but it's a bit of a map, and Kirsten might want to add to it.
Yeah, I can get into more detail about that. So a lot of them were one-to-one ed tech positions that either the kids moved or they graduated at the high school level, so they were no longer needed. So there was not a kid attached to that one-to-one. And at the high school, there were 2 positions for Rise. They're both vacant right now. When the program originally started, it was 1 classroom, 8 techs. Now it's up to 2 teachers and more techs than 8. And the enrollments are down, so we can reduce that by only hiring for 1 teacher and keeping the ed techs we have, not hiring anymore. So there was 1 teacher and 5 or 6 ed techs I could cut from there. So it was all positions like that. It was not taking anybody, no one's going to lose their job, or I don't even think there are any teachers that need to switch buildings. It's just the vacancies that we looked at for every building.
Ms. Eames.
Thank you. I just have a clarification question, and it's about what is co-teaching? I know from my life that co-teaching for me as a prof is two professors taking on 1 class together, planning everything together. But I have this feeling that maybe it means something different in your case. Does it mean, oh, that's what it means?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
It sounded like there was some special,
No, I mean,
something special about it. I thought it was some of the best things I ever did were co-taught. I learned so much from co-teaching.
Yep.
So I really think it's a wonderful thing, but it is more work.
Right, we got to make sure that we put, have the common prep planning periods there so that teachers can plan together, so that the teachers are equal. It's not like you're the teacher on the ed tech. They're actually co-teachers. At the high school, for instance, it'll mean bringing our kids that are typically in like a resource level room, but we call it basic levels, pushing them to be mainstreamed a little bit more, the ones that are ready, and can be serviced with their general ed peers as well as a special education teacher. So
Are you done? Zay?
So the co-teachers are a teacher of the regular curriculum and a special ed teacher
Yeah, it's like
together.
content
Okay, so that's
specialists.
the twist.
Yep.
Okay, so they have different specialties, but
Correct.
they're together teaching a group of students it's two groups of students put together. Is that correct? Okay,
it'll be a
thank you.
content specialist and a special ed teacher
Yeah,
teaching
so
together.
that's the twist that I wanted to get out.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bowden?
Thank you. First, that was a great presentation, like very, very informative and very well put together, easy to understand. So I really appreciate what you did there.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe you answered this question, but I missed it. So I would like to ask, do you have individuals in mind already for this second assistant director position, the Mainecare billing specialist, the BCBA supervisor? Do we have someone lined up, or is this going to be positions that if we add them, they're just sitting and not being filled like many others in our district?
I think it's a great question. We're going to open them up. I think it's nice to know people in our own district, but we don't know who might be interested in a structure like this to really work with a solid team. So we could have some good applicants from outside the district. So we would have to open it up and have a process around those. I would note too that the special services administrators, because of the shift in that role, the way that we envision it, I did sit and meet with special ed supervisors and let them know that these would be new positions. So by way of budget process, we would be eliminating the current role and changing it fundamentally to the new role. So we would post those and hire for those also.
Mr. Beauplan?
Thank you. How would the movement from special ed supervisor to special ed administrator, what would contracts be? What would be observation and evaluation be?
Yeah, so those positions currently exist in our personnel policy. And within the budget, actually within Article 2, if you look for, actually I can find a spot so I can show you. We put in the difference in the current or the actual and what would be the difference if this role had shifted. Let me give you a line just to see, line 1020. 1020, I think. Oh, sorry, in the big section under tab D, I believe, or sorry, G. Yep, line 1020, it says LHS SE supervisor salary, and you see a change in $8,412. That would be the shift in compensation if we went with this current model.
Again, if you could just refresh my memory, tenure, evaluation, observation, how does that go?
So these positions will supervise the educators in the building that work in the special education department and ed techs, and then their direct reports would be connected back to the assistant directors and to the director.
Ms. Scott?
If we might, I'd like to let her continue her and then ask something after because it pertains to this presentation. If we could just let her finish, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
That's fine.
This is the last slide, so it just put where to go from here. So I would like to continue to work on the stability and communication throughout the entire district, integrating regular ed, special ed, and ELL students and staff, working more together, not, special ed versus regular ed, how it has felt sometimes in the past. I feel like I would like to work all together because they're all our students and they all deserve for us to do our best. Continue to build special programming in small pockets within the district and support with appropriate personnel. So BCBAs, clinicians, administrators, to reduce the overall cost in the long run for allowing students to be kept in district. We're fortunate enough that we have these programs, the ABA model with the RISE and the day treatment within our own districts. Many other districts do not have that. And so we have that ability to service these kids. And I think that we should continue to build upon that rather than looking at other places and relying on them to service our kids. Look at reducing the behaviors in schools to promote school safety with the additions of BCBAs to assist in behavior management. So the more BCBAs we can get on board, the overall, I think the safety of our schools might improve. And to improve teaching and learning, that would be my number one focus. When all the other stuff is settled, is to, improve the literacy. I believe that once the foundation is solid, that we can improve or look at improving teaching and learning systematically. And again, that's regular ed, special ed, and ELL all working together. So that was my presentation.
Ms. Scott?
Thank you. So I want to reiterate, thank you for such a great presentation. So this is the line of work that I'm in also. So I want to say that I greatly appreciate when you say that these are all of our students. It is not a difficult, it's not an easy job sometimes. It's quite difficult. And so to the staff members sitting over there, I want to give a personal thank you because I do know the kind of work that you're doing. But I do have a couple of questions. So first off, I'm old. And so this is way too tiny writing for me. So I'm wondering, can you send this to us through email so that I can see? Because I tried to take notes, but I like to go through things again. And I'm also wondering if the presentation that with Jake's overvoice, we could have that as well. Because I think that the explanation there is going to be extremely helpful for me as a city councilor to discuss some of this subject with my fellow city councilors, because I think this is going to be a huge discussion. Because of the cost, right, and everything.
But I couldn't. So
yeah. So I would appreciate if I could have that. So I wanted to just go over a couple of things that I was thinking about here. So we currently have 4 BCBAs in district, and you're looking for, were you looking for one more to add to Connors plus the supervisor? I just wanted the clarification on that.
We currently have 4. Connors has already been posted. Took the funds already to cover that. I'm asking for a BCBA supervisor.
Okay.
To oversee the billing.
Yeah.
The McMahon and Montello, so that the others BCBAs can stay in their schools and help the administrators and support the programs fully there. So
okay,
it's just the addition of that BCBA supervisor.
Okay. And can you, I think you said it, but I want to, there was a lot of information here. So do we know the number of students on section 28 that could be billed through section? Can you repeat that?
Well,
do we have a number?
Currently, I think we have 118 maybe BHPs that are employed, but we have a lot of more vacancies as well. So I can't give you an exact number. I'd say it's around 150 that could be billed. That's 28 and 65 together. For BHPs, we could bill for our service providers. There's all kinds of stuff we could bill for. We could bill for, and this is not going to happen all at once because, obviously it's going to be, it would be a process to do it right. But there's all, you can even bill for psyche valves.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, so I really appreciate, I took a lot of time to read the audits that were done, and I greatly appreciate that you're using that as your starting point and really the big part of the conversation to move forward with this. The fact that, and a lot of people don't understand the building of section 8, the billing and all of that, and with Mainecare, that is one of the things that I do. And I also do it personally because currently I'm just working with 2 particular clients on a personal level right now. And there's significant costs that we could be getting back from that. And that's a really important piece, but it's getting the understanding to the community that adding these additional costs and how that might save us in the long term is going to be the big piece that we're going to have to struggle through here. And I'm going to say this from my experience of being on the school board a few years ago and the 6 years I was there. This was always the big conversation. And we're adding these people. And as Jake just stated, we're putting these people in these positions. We need these BHPs, ed tech one-on-ones to help solve these issues. And as we can see, that was not the appropriate way to go about things. And so it's really important that when we start having this conversation with the community to understand our budget, that we look at all of this and that audit is being used as the tool to move us forward in the direction we really need to be, and not leaving any money on the table, I think is going to be a big part of this conversation.
I looked into doing it in how, like having the clinicians and the BCBAs and the staff all do that, but I just think that our district is too large. I contacted, the EDMS person as well as our Mainecare specialist for the state of Maine, and I just don't think, I think we'd have chances of getting audited and not doing it appropriately because we're just too large, basically.
So I know that when we have the finance committee, we're going to talk a little bit more in detail on this. And I think that's going to be a big part of this conversation also. But I think that it's really important. And I would like to just offer to my fellow school board members that if we want further conversation on this, I think this is really going to be the big part of the conversation in the community. That I'd be more than willing to sit with folks and have that bigger conversation about, particularly around what a BCBA does, the BHPs, and what that funding source is in Section 8 and 65. I would love to do that further so that there's an understanding even more so, because it is kind of complicated, but it's also a big part of this. So I'm just putting that out there right now. That's all I have for right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bopala.
Thank you. I'd like to apologize for jumping the gun, asking a
Oh, it's okay.
question. I thought you were finished, and I
Almost done.
apologize for disrupting the flow. So this proposal, Jake, which makes sense to me in many ways, not always, is that we will both save money and improve the quality of care that we give our students and their families.
Yes.
And we will do this by, and here's the disconnect for me, adding to what I call the bureaucracy of Lewiston schools.
I don't know that we would agree on the definition, but I would say in all the audit reports and in talking to all the staff on multiple levels over the last year plus, everyone points to a breakdown, not of the people in the role, but of the responsibilities of the role itself. And the more we look at it, it is the point at which the bridge breaks over and over and over again historically. And it's led to all these positions that are budgeted that are not completely necessary. It's led to IEPs that are written ineffectively. It's led to families leaving IEP meetings upset that their children are not getting what they need, or that what they need might have been accurate, but it couldn't have been articulated well or walked through, because we've had 29 people in that position in the last 7 years. The turnover is just unfathomable. There's no chance for our district to have consistency, accuracy, and a sense of stability and good communication with our families and children's supports or student supports if we don't get that position stabilized. It is an absolute critical component.
I'll change bureaucracy to hierarchy of authority, if that makes it a little better. None of this, again, I'm using my role as a former teacher, and that's clouding the issue for me. None of this improves direct instruction to students, or does it?
So I think that it does. And let me tell you why I feel that way. And Karen or Kirsten, feel free to chime in. It does because the number one complaint from teachers is I don't know what the hell to do. And when you have this disorganized piece at that level, and people don't know how to implement an IEP that was written poorly, that doesn't make sense, or you have a student in front of you in a classroom because the enrollment or the student was placed there, and you don't know how to go about the IEP because you teach a different program entirely, or the amount of paperwork that you have because someone else could be helping, but that's not part of the role right now. I think it does free up a little bit of time for special education teachers. I think it helps them have a place to go where they can get an answer that is consistent and rational. I think it helps people carry out their work without thinking what is going on over there? And with the turnover and the difference in decision-making year after year after year, when I talk to teachers, they're almost okay with the decisions, not one that they would agree with. They just want it to be consistent. And when you have someone new and they ask you, and you ask them a question and you get a different response, and now you have to change your programming or shift your curriculum or meet a different student's needs that maybe shouldn't be in front of you, that takes more time away from teaching and learning than anything else during the day.
I think too, the TPEG process, I know my first year as an administrator compared to my last year, even from when I was a special ed supervisor, because they are currently evaluating teachers, to my last year's AP, I was like leaps and bounds way better than I ever had my first year. So I think that's a process that they don't, when the seat's always turning over, they're not familiarizing themselves with every single standard indicator. By the time I was done last year, I had them all memorized. Like I could talk about them and talk to teachers about what's best practices and setting up my classroom. So I think the consistency there will help guiding their teachers on best teaching and learning practices.
And I certainly want to be clear that I completely understand, without hanging our dirty laundry out on the line, that many of the issues we're dealing with are from the past that we had limited knowledge or control over. And certainly, again, I'm so pleased that things are going in a great direction from people I've talked with and parents and so on. So please, no
Oh, no.
implication here. I'm just concerned with the, again, thank you.
And just for a budgetary purpose, because you remember, you're right, Member Beaupont, that this is an increased administrative cost, and compared to the positions that are currently in play with this new change, a difference of $62,000.
Ms. Whitlow.
I thought you said 95,907.
That's the grand total, the difference in cost from one to another, without talking about subtractions of other positions and all that. So each of these positions has a little markup, and that total markup is $62,000.
Yeah, I just want to say this is the first time I've sat through a special ed presentation where I haven't felt a lot of anxiety. So I want to thank you for, you have done a lot of work deciphering things and going through things, and I really appreciate it. And I support it, and I can't wait to see what happens over the next few years and how we evolve from this. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. It means a lot.
Anything else from the committee? Mr. Beaupont.
Jake, how does this impact the percentage increase that was originally in your budget? How much does it reduce it?
So again, that mutually exclusive conversation, that the budget savings or realized savings to our district would be once things are in place and we reduce the number of kids that are leaving us. In the short run, it's that $95,000 in change. But when I talk about the $95,000 in change and overall percentage, we have other corrections and reductions to bring to you on Wednesday. So I don't want you thinking that today was it. We still have some things that we're still working on to make sure we bring you. But I feel strongly that much of the percentage increase we are looking at is really around those salaries and benefits and some of those costs that we don't have a lot of control over. And those, the effort to put the supplies back in the classrooms. And so this percentage increase is a small portion of really what is that larger whole. But again, we're bringing more things to you on Wednesday. We're just vetting and firming things up. So we present you an appropriate list. So there will be further reductions to what you have in front of you.
Ms. Whitlow.
And what you have given us for numbers tonight does not include any Mainecare billing revenue that we might get, correct?
Correct. It doesn't include Mainecare billing because we don't realize that till it's realized. We can't claim it as a revenue until it's real. But that was upwards of, again, $400,000 to $500,000. Some think that's a conservative number. I'd rather be conservative when it talks about revenue that we don't have. And then we have that, it's hard to put our finger on it if we do straight math on number of kids being outplaced with transportation versus those whom we might keep home. There's some cost savings there, but I haven't done the actual math on that.
Mr. Bopal.
Thank you. With another bugaboo of mine that I hope this would possibly solve proposes a solution, would the new hierarchy of authority be able to look over past IEPs? I see again, and through conversations and talking to other educators and administrators, it just seems I'm not even going to say abnormally, I'm going to say abysmally high ratio of special ed students to the general population. Now, I totally recognize we're serving the underserved. We have refugee populations. Is it possible that from what may have occurred in the past that there were improper IEPs, and let's give them special services, let's give them an ed tech, let's make it one-on-one. I don't want to seem unsympathetic to special ed, believe me, but I'm just going on my observations. Thank you.
I would say that there might be some discrepancies on the way that the IEPs are written, and and I think the audit pointed that out, that we needed to start writing them differently, which we're trying to get that straightened out, Anna and I right now. And that's why you saw some extra positions within the budget that we could get rid of. Moving to this different hierarchy, I think that and we put on there that they could write the written notices, the special ed supervisor. We felt, administrator, whatever they're called. We felt that that is something that we could ask them to do, and it's an extra thing on their plate, but it would help with that, making sure they're writing the written notice. When they check the teacher's IEP, they could cross-reference it because they wrote the written notice. And it would also give something to the teachers, because we know that our special ed teachers are overwhelmed. So just saw it as like an overall positive move to make. You want to add anything to that, Anna?
I just add, remember, Bopal, you're absolutely right. We have some students who were identified that received too many services. We have students not identified for the right services. It's all over the roadmap. And when they did the IEP audit, they identified that the number one thing you can do, which was a nice way of saying, you got a bunch of stuff here that you shouldn't have, and you have some things missing that you should have. Their nice way of saying that is you really want to secure how you go about your IEP processes and develop some consistency there. That was their really nice reporting way of saying exactly what your question was, that we have some receiving too much, others not receiving what they should, and it's all over the map. We've talked about this some over the last year or so as we've gotten the audit report back and done more work, but it's going to take, if we can get this moving in this direction, it will take us 3 years to get through each student's triennial to have consistency around this. But I think we're willing to make that commitment.
Jake, these several positions you're talking about moving them from the teachers CBA into the personnel policy?
No, the current positions are not in the collective bargaining agreement from the LEA. They are personnel policy positions currently. And so where they land will actually be a discussion. If this moves in that direction and this is approved, we'll be having conversations with the Administrators Association to see if this is the right fit there, or if we do something in personnel policies to, again, maintain that compensation we think is appropriate, aligned to that scale.
I feel I want to introduce them too, because they're here. Most of them are here tonight. And I didn't get a chance to do that at the beginning. So Jane Williams, if you want to raise your hand, she's from McMahon. Erica Goslin behind her is from Montello. Misty, who is sitting down, if you want to raise, she's from Farwell. Carrie Jackson from LMS. Jessica Ritz from Connors. And Jen Albert from the high school. Is anybody else? And then I introduced Laura Lee and Anna, but they're here tonight. So.
And I don't know if any of them want to chime in, but I don't think it'd be out of line to ask for just a brief applause for some of the work that they do, because I don't think people understand how hard they work.
You all set, Kristen?
I'm all set.
Okay, thank you.
You're
That
welcome.
was very informative.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you.
Just food for thought for the committee. I did share that presentation with you. Maybe before we go tonight, someone could try the link. It'll always work for me because it was where it was generated. I just want to make sure it works for you.
Yeah. I want to thank all of the special ed staff that's here. Your job is one of the, it's hugely important to the students, but we realize how difficult it is. So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is report from school committee chair. It's only been 3 days since we were here, so I really don't have anything else to report at this time. And after that is report from the superintendent.
I'll try to be brief, but I think we have some things that we continue to work on. I want to share with you. You may have seen an email from me this morning regarding water. We got some results late Friday. Our facilities team worked diligently over the weekend to make sure things were labeled. A couple spots at the middle school that are for drinking water that were slightly high, not the high concerns like we had at some of our other schools. So we continue to work on that. We're also anticipating some return test results from our follow-ups. What we're suspecting and starting to see is that the flush follow-up test, which is when you let the water run a bit, it's returning results that are just fine as far as lead levels are concerned in most spots. But we're going to make sure that that is a flush issue and not a something else issue. So we're going to make sure that we follow through with that and make sure that we're following all those mitigation steps just for public knowledge. Safety has been an ongoing conversation in and around what are our practices and how we might shift those. If you recall, we pushed off an agenda item a couple weeks ago and we had a really busy night, and that'll be coming back to you. But I'm sharing that because I want to pair it with the vibes around the waiver that Bruce and I have been working with the state on behalf of the committee. They feel like they're moving in a good direction. We don't have our final communications yet, but we feel like that's going well. If that's the case, it'll reduce the number of student days in June. And we would like to do, and I'll do this more formally in that proposal, is use some of that time to do this safety drill practice with actual scenarios with people in their spaces, which is a highly emotional, challenging thing for people to think about and to deal with, but I think something that everybody wants to be ready for. So within the next few meetings on a regular agenda, we'll share that from last time. I had one more thing, but I don't. Yeah, I did have one more thing. It's been shared recently, and if you see her, please say hello and also wish her well. But our HR director, Kim Brown, is taking an opportunity to move closer to family in the South. And we had an idea this was coming. She's been very open and honest with it up front. I think we're all hoping it didn't. We love her dearly, and she'll be with us for a few more weeks, but then she'll be parting ways. And I told her that whatever she buys for house has to be big enough to house all of us so we can come down to visit. So that's one of the things that I wanted to share with you.
I know those of us on negotiations is definitely going to miss Kim. She's been a huge asset to us in her time here. But we do wish, I personally wish her well. As I think she's with her new little baby and going back to where family is. That's really super important for her. I hope it works very well for her. She will be missed. Report from the city council rep.
Thank you. So we do have a very packed agenda for tomorrow evening. Very packed agenda. Repeat that, very, very packed agenda. We start the evening with a budget workshop. So we got our budget memo from City Administrator Heather Hunter on Friday. And as I suggested to all the city councilors, I'll suggest to the school committee members, you really should read it and take a look at the whole picture. We're going to start our discussion tomorrow and go over that. We've got 3 different executive sessions tomorrow evening. The mayor will be presenting a special congratulations to our Lewiston High School cheerleading team, which I thought was nice that the mayor is focusing on a lot of the activities that our students are having and congratulating them. I think that's a great thing. And then we have, like I said, a packed agenda with many different public hearings, one specifically that Megan knows about, and that is going to be the possibility of asking the city administrator and the city staff to look into and research putting a moratorium on homeless shelters. So this is going to be a big conversation tomorrow evening. And that's about it for right now. I'll fill you in next week after we have the meeting.
Linda, when does your city council meeting start? Is that 6 o'clock?
The budget work, 6 o'clock will start. We'll have the first half hour at 6 o'clock is going to be the overall budget memo and Heather's budget presentation. We're not going to get, I don't think, any further than that first half hour on the budget conversation. At this point, we'll start scheduling for those specific budget meetings because we have a regular agenda starting at 7 o'clock is when we go into the regular agenda.
Student rep is not here. Updates from subcommittees. Ms. Bowden.
Thank you. The Finance Committee did meet for the first time last week on Tuesday. Kind of got an overview, went over some audits from the past 3 years and just started having little discussions with regard to the budget. So we meet again tomorrow and I'll have more after that. Thank you.
Any other subcommittee reports? Ms. Whitlow?
For the dyslexia subcommittee, Karen and I met with Maine Department of Education today and just discussed kind of where the state is at and legislature and all the things dyslexia stuff, just so we can talk, I guess. And we will be part of the stakeholders, this dyslexia stakeholders group with the state of Maine. I think it's important that there's an administrator or it doesn't matter, an educator that's at those meetings with me when I'm there, because I don't know all the lingo. I don't know all the things that they do, but I will definitely be at all of those. Just hoping for movement, keeping up with what's going on, and making sure that we're at the table where the decisions are being made for all things dyslexia. So I thought it was a pretty great meeting today.
Policy subcommittee will meet tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
And if you're on that committee, you got an email from me this afternoon with a long list of policies that I'm being ambitious and hoping that we can get to, but that's tomorrow, and Tanya will update you when we meet again.
I know that Ashley had asked us to look at the, what is it? The tardy policy. So that is one of the things that we are going to look at. Hopefully we have time. We'll at least start the process. I don't know if we'll have time to get to that one because I kind of threw that on her last minute today. But we're definitely going to take a look at it. And I would suggest that once I figure this out, I will let you read it. I'll let you read it. Like it's my job to let you read it. And I think if you're the one who has a concern, I would want you at the table as well to talk about that. How many people do we actually have in the policy committee right now for school board members? It's 1, 2, 3. I think Megan might be on it. So no, 5 is a quorum. So as long as there's not 5 people.
We did have 5, but I think Linda has Linda has. removed
I pulled myself out.
Oh,
I
okay.
have far too much on my plate already. I wasn't adding policy.
So we had 4 or we had 5?
We had 5, so we have 4. We have Elizabeth, Megan Parks.
Okay.
Oh, no, sorry, we have 3. I was counting Jake. So it's Tanya, Megan, and Elizabeth, Jake and I.
So for any of the meetings, as long as there's not 5 board members, you can join us for any meeting. And it sounds like there should never be 5, so that you can always join us. So I don't know if we'll get to that one, but we're going to try, but I want you involved for sure.
Are there any other subcommittee reports? I know that Bill and Josh are working on some facility stuff with the folks from JCI, and that's ongoing. So there'll be something from that shortly, I assume. Ms. Bowden?
I'll just add that there is another subcommittee that we're starting 2 weeks. The 6 to 8 concept, middle school concept subcommittee. So we're going to begin meeting, not this week, possibly next week.
It's the 29th.
The 29th, so in 2 weeks, yes. So that is on my radar. I just wanted to throw that out there too. Thanks.
Anyone else? Ms. Whitlow?
I feel like there needs to be something said. I know that there's been a lot of concern that there's not a contract yet for the LEA certified professionals contract. I do want to say that I felt at the last meeting, it went well, and I'm hoping that we can start really wrapping things up. And now that Kim is leaving, who does all of the numbers, I think it's important that we try to get some things solidified here with that aspect, with pay and all that. I think it's really important. So I want people to know that I'm sorry that there isn't a contract yet, and we are working on it. And I don't know what else to say. It's just, that's all I can say right now.
Ms. Parks?
Can you speak to what has created any of the delays, or can you not speak to that at all?
I don't think at this point, it's going to be productive to speak to that. The next item is community announcements. And I would like to remind everybody that on Thursday, the 24th, is going to be the opening and celebration of the Arts Wing from 5 to 7. 50 years in the making and 5 years in the planning, and it's exciting. I feel like it's a real accomplishment that we finally were able to do that, considering all of the challenges. But I'm hopeful that folks can come and really recognize what we accomplished.
Just real quick, I thought this would be an appropriate time to just throw this out there for any Lewiston High School parents that are watching. There have been a lot of announcements about parent-teacher conferences starting tomorrow night and again on Thursday night. And there seems to be a pretty wide open window for parents to schedule and get in there. So I would just remind parents that they should definitely take advantage of the time to go in and speak to their kids' teachers. Thanks.
Thank you. The first one's going to kind of carry over from a community announcement to a future agenda item, if that's okay. So last Wednesday, the mayor convened a substance use forum to bring local and statewide providers together. We had a Zoom meeting. There was probably 20, 25 people from the whole state on that call. One subject that came up during that was the possibility of implementation of a peer recovery training program in our schools for our middle school and high school, or at least high school students. If there's any students that are interested, that provides, for anyone that's not familiar, it provides students who may have previously experienced some kind of substance use issues, whether that's secondhand because of a family member or themselves, and they are currently in recovery or are recovering from the effects of that they could sit through a training and become a peer recovery coach, and then they would be able to support other students through those activities. And I think that's a great idea. So I'd like to propose a future agenda item where we have a broader discussion on this, and maybe have a workshop with community partners and maybe Vicky before she retires, presenting that and seeing if it's something that we can develop for our students. And I have a second one. Following up on what Member Scott said about the moratorium at tomorrow, the moratorium on number 9 on tomorrow's agenda of the City Council. There are several former and current Lewiston Public Schools students who are involved with the Store Next Door homeless service program that will be speaking during public comment tomorrow in opposition of a moratorium on homeless services. So I encourage anyone who wants to show support for these students or support for homeless services to attend that meeting. We have students that they may not be directly impacted by it now, but often homeless students become homeless adults. And when we're limiting the service in the community, we're telling our kids that we are not invested in their futures. And so we should not do that.
Megan, can you tell people what a moratorium is?
Linda, do you want to tell people what a moratorium is?
So first off, I want to be cautious about this conversation. So the request on the City Council's agenda tomorrow evening is to ask city staff to research and write a moratorium. We are not voting on a moratorium tomorrow night. We're going to vote on if we're going to ask city staff to put one together. Now, a definition of a moratorium is generally considered a ban or a stop to something. But again, we have to be cautious because it depends on how they want the language will be on this and how this will move forward. So, Megan?
So is there ever a situation where there is a request to draft language around a moratorium and then they don't push forward to pass the moratorium? It's not just a practice and, okay, we wrote one and now we're going to move on. Essentially, the goal is to put the moratorium in place, correct?
Yes, and generally when a moratorium is put in place, it does not generally go away, historically speaking, but there is no determination on that whatsoever. It depends on the language, and again, if there's a time frame put on it.
I thought, and Ms. Scott, maybe you can, I thought what I read in the paper was that the moratorium had a finite length of 6 months.
So I don't know yet, to be honest with you, because the language that I'm getting is what I read in the agenda, and the agenda has just the actual what's being discussed on number 9 tomorrow night. And that says specifically that I think they're 3 months or 6 months is some of the language that they were looking at, but we don't know yet.
Anything else under community announcements? Future agenda items. I know there was a request about the policy for how we move forward on sports. Trying to think what the number was. It was JIIB, I think, yeah. It's the one where we talked about the sports teams and how they were brought forth. That whether there was a 2-year or that they had to self-fund or how they were actually approved. There was a question about bringing that forward. Mr. Beaupont.
Thank you, Chairman, for bringing that up. Could we request, if this is on agenda item, we have Mr. Fuller in on this, because we, if I remember for the last issue in the fall, we voted with our hearts rather than our head, and we don't want to do that again.
So it is referencing JJIB, and I pulled an excerpt of that and shared it with Mr. Fuller today, and letting him know that on the future agenda item, we would likely see this. So I'd anticipate he would, if he can't make it, he'd at least have input.
Thank you for that reminder, Mr. Beauplan. Other future agenda items at the moment? Seeing none, motion to adjourn? Whoop, Ms. Scott?
And this is not a future agenda item. It's just that I went to my email to see if I got the presentation from tonight's. And I did get Kristen's presentation that she had given us the paper one, but we didn't get the video. Were you going to do that too?
So the video is on one of the slides. I think it's slide 15. I think if you click on the link, we can give it a check though.
Okay, thank you. Oh, see, I didn't.
The one that I sent is her slideshow, and on slide, I think 15 is the link for the video.
Okay, got it.
I move we adjourn.